Judge Pryor, I'm going to ask you to share next.
Thank you. The last two are tough acts to follow. Dr. Morgan, when I was a young fellow in Birmingham, we would ride the streetcar past 5 Points West and then Kittyland Park. And every time we went by there, I would ask my daddy if we could go to Kittyland Park. And he would say, absolutely not. And that was the end of that conversation. I rode the streetcars and the streetcars disappeared and the trolley buses, the electric buses, came along. And I suspect that's when you came along.
I remember the one you rode.
That's right, that's right. So I just want to say that to let you know that don't worry about age, I got you. But it's a very interesting time, and I was given the instruction to talk. My first real experience with racism was when I was about 7 years old, asleep in my bed, probably dreaming wonderful dreams. And all of a sudden I heard something go boom. And the next thing I heard was a cabinet fall off the wall in our kitchen, and just about every dish that we had was broken. And just about every glass was broken. The bomb went off about a mile away from our house, but it was so powerful that it knocked the cabinet off the wall. And I could then hear my mother and father, and it was late. They were in there cleaning up. My older brother had gotten up and he was in there taking orders from them. And I was in the bed scared to death. I did not know what was going on or what would likely follow. That was my first experience with racism, and I didn't even know what it was. But a bomb had gone off, all because a black family moved on the wrong side of the street. Little did I know that my mother and father had bought a lot and were trying to save their precious pennies to build a house in that same neighborhood, which they did 5 to 6 years later, and we moved in to that neighborhood. Now mind you, this is 1949, 1950, when that first one went off. And that has stayed with me throughout the days of my life. Fast forward, if we can. There are a lot of things that I could discuss with you that are personal, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to fast forward from that time to 1963, which is a defining period in my life. And if you will recall, in 1963, Martin Luther King came to Birmingham and was placed in jail for his efforts and wrote the letter, the famous letter rather, from the jail to the white ministers here in Birmingham who had written him, asking him to slow down, that he was trying to do things too quickly. You will also remember 1963, in June of that year, that George Wallace made his stand in the schoolhouse door. It was a downtime for me, personally. I was a student, I was away from home, and got a chance to then attend the March on Washington. And was standing about 50 yards from Dr. King when he gave that speech. And after it was over, I looked around and there wasn't a dry eye as far as I could see. It was just a beautiful town. White people of all denominations, ethnic backgrounds, religious backgrounds, black folks the same, Hispanic people, Native Indians, you name it, everybody was there that day. And there was no problem whatsoever in that city. And it worked beautifully. So I leave there and I'm up. Well, I come home and Arthur Shores' house is bombed. And that house is about as far from my house as the front door of this church is from me, from where I sit now. It tore up the foundation to our house, and it was on the side of a hill, which meant that the house began to move slowly downhill. And they had to fix it. We were not rich people by any stretch of the imagination. And that little insurance policy that you call homeowners insurance that most of you have has an exclusion in it. And that exclusion excludes from coverage damage done to your residence as a result of civil commotion, riots, and war. And that was deemed to be all of the above, and the insurance company wouldn't cover the loss. So my parents had to go to the bank, get some money, try to figure out a way to get that house rebuilt, and they did. The next thing that happened was I went on back to college and came back home 2 weeks later and walked in the door, and you remember how your mother and fathers used to look at you to see if you're eating right, if you're doing the right things. Mama was sitting there examining her baby boy, looking at me, and all of a sudden another bomb went off. This time it was a bomb at the Shores residence again. Only this time, rather than on the end of the house where the den and garage and all of that resided, it was right near the bedroom of Mr. and Mrs. Shores. She happened to have been in the bed and was knocked across the room and was injured on that occasion. I ran out of my house and straight across the street. And when I came down my steps to the street, the police were already in my driveway. They had already walled off the entire area on every street. And so I helped kick the door on in. It was partially kicked in, and helped Mr. Shores get to his wife so that he could tend to her. It was an awful, awful time because they were very, very close. I'd known them all of my life, and just bad time. We get through that process, and I get on back to Talladega College, and I'm studying and learning, and I'm walking across the street to go to get something to eat at the dining hall, and a young fellow pulls up in a convertible car, and the news comes on the radio, bulletin, bulletin, bulletin. You know how they used to interrupt in those days. Some of us who with some age can know about that. And they announced that 16th Street Baptist Church had been bombed. And as a result of that bombing, 3 of very close friends were killed. 3 of the 4 little girls. Now, the smell of dynamite. I never worked around dynamite, never been around legally set off dynamite, but it is so distinctive when I smell it. I can smell it. It's in my nose, it's in my head. And I'll tell you, it's not something that you ever want to smell. That is who I am. And if you call me Boom Boom, I'll respond. It's awful. It'll never leave me. And yet, I have attempted in my life, through repression, sometimes not even thinking nor discussing or talking about those events, and even worse ones. I've repressed those I heard somebody say that it was getting on with daily activities, raising children, working in the church, working in the community. Those activities helped me to repress. In recent years, I've spoken more about it than I did many years ago. But it was a tough time. I grew up on Dynamite Hill. I have a very close friend that I've known from the day of her birth, sitting out in the audience, and we're still friends, and her family, we've always been friends. And I still have friends like her. I'm really proud of her. But it's been a tough time. Now, when Catherine called me about participating on the panel, I took a pretty long time to respond. I don't know what unconscious racism is. And I have thought about it. I've read as much as I could read in the past few days, and I still don't know what it is. I know what a lack of sensitivity is. I know what a denial of fact is. I even know what it is to repress my own experiences in the interest of trying to maintain some decency and not be hate-filled. But I do not know what unconscious racism is. We all need to talk more about this issue and more openly about the issue. But there are only two defense mechanisms that I'm aware of in the field of psychology that would be appropriate under these circumstances, and that is to suppress experiences, thoughts, and feelings, or to repress those same things. Repression is generally the victim who does not want to relive that event. And so you just push it in the back of your head, and it becomes a mechanism that helps you to go on and go about your daily lives. Suppression is a conscious effort, which generally takes thought, takes remembrance, takes knowledge, and the only way that suppression can be accomplished is by repudiation of the existence of that fact. Now, why am I saying that? I think that we sometimes are going crazy in this country. I really do. And what I'm hearing in this presidential race is very frightening to me personally, based on what my experiences have been growing up. And we need to not get into this thing of discussing unconscious racism. It's not unconscious. I read the Google corporate stuff that they did. And you mean to tell me that all the people that work for Google went to work every day and failed to see and understand that there were no women working there, and no African Americans or Hispanics working there. That's just a complete denial of the existence of a fact. And I think we need to do that. We need to keep this whole issue above and out front, because my goodness, I see 1948 all over again. 1948 was when the Dixiecrats walked out of the Democratic Convention and formed the Dixiecrat Party right here in Birmingham, Alabama, at the Municipal Auditorium, and ran Senator Strom Thurmond for president. And it was all based on the maintenance of segregation, superiority of whites over blacks. And we need to combat that and never turn backwards at all in any sense of the word. I could tell you a lot of other things, but I've taken too much time, and I thank you for allowing me.